The theme of our mission this week has been, do we need Lent? Do we need another Lent? But the reason I like this is because Lents don't make us better. They do not make us better. We make ourselves better. And the church offers us all kinds of opportunities so that we can become who we were meant to be. So the church offers us Advents and Lents. Church offers us Mass and retreats. And the purpose is so that you and I can become what God wants us to be. So going through all Lent isn't going to make you better. Lent doesn't do it. You do. It's important to understand that because sometimes we just think if you just go through the motions, everything gets better. Everything gets better. So tonight, I am calling you to what I believe I need most in my life. Lent has always been about conversion. Now, when I grew up, we didn't have crossovers or SUVs. We had conversion vans. And those of you who are laughing, you know, you're about my age. Conversion vans. Now, the car dealers stole that word from the Christians. I'm not kidding you. I'm not making that up. So I actually went to Randy Reed here in Kansas City many years ago. I went to Randy Reed and I said, "Hey, Randy, you guys stole this word from the Christians." Yeah, he said, "Father," he said, he took me out onto the lot. He said, "Father," he said, "look at this van. It's a brand new van. A brand new van. It's a good van. Brand new." Now, we took that good van and we went over here and we put every gadget we could think of. We put carpeting, we put new sound system, we put swivel seats. It's now a great van. Friends, conversion is not going from bad to good. I grew up in a church that's what I was told. You're bad, and with the grace of God, you can become good. And if you experience conversion, you go from bad to good. We're not bad people. We are children of God, but we are called to greatness. So what do you need to do in your life to be called great in the eyes of God? The eyes of God. Not in our eyes. That's way too easy. What do you need to do to be called great in the eyes of God? And then you spend the time trying to figure that out. So as I shared with you on the weekend, 6 years. I'm working on this for 6 years. Driving my car and putting up with bad drivers. And you know what? They're all over. They're not just here. They're in California, and they're in Colorado, and they're in Nebraska. They're all over. But I am trying my best because I know when I get this conquered, I will be called great in the eyes of God. I know that. So how about you? Maybe that's what you ought to do during Lent. Figure out what you need to do personally to be called great in the eyes of God. That's conversion. That's conversion. Now, I told you last night that the greatest sermon in my mind is Jesus' walk to his death. The walk that's on the walls of the church. He took a walk to his death and he was teaching us. So I thought this is his greatest sermon. But the best sermon that I've ever heard, let me share this. I have some friends here and I think they know this story, but the rest of you haven't heard this. So you might know that my twin brother and I, we were chaplains for the Chicago Bears for 21 years. One of us went with them on every away game. We were in the hotel, on the sidelines. We did all that. 21 years. This particular time, both my brother and I were traveling with the Bears to California. So we were playing the Rams. So we played, we said Mass, and then my brother and I started heading towards the team meal, which is always a great experience in the NFL. So we got up and started out the door of the hotel, and Coach says, "We're not done." I said, "Mass is ended." The Mass is ended. No, we're not done. Now we have the Protestant service. And then my brother said, knock yourself out, go ahead, We're going to the team meal. No. We all go to both. We go to the team mass, and then we go to the Protestant service. So now we have to go back into the hotel room where the Protestant service was. Now it's like in the Catholic Church. You come late, you got to come up front. Okay? Because the cheap seats are up front. The expensive ones are in the back. So now we have to go all the way down. The place was packed. So we got to go all the way down. There were 3 chairs open in the first row. So my brother and I were sitting on the either side of Richard Dent, who's in the Hall of Fame, big Chicago Bear guy. He's sitting in the middle, and we sit at the end. So we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, behind the curtain, here comes Reverend John Perkins, from Baptist preacher from North Pasadena, California. He came out there and he picked up the Bible, real serious, picked up the Bible, and he looked at it. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the quarterback. I don't care if you own this team. I don't care if you're the running back. I don't care. You will not enter heaven unless you walk 3 rows. Now, there wasn't a sound in that room. He picked up the Bible again, looked at it, slammed it shut. I don't care if you're a Roman Catholic priest. Mean. And Richard Dent went, "He ain't talking to me, Padre." And then he went into an incredible talk. He said, "You better walk these 3 roads, and they're not multiple choice. You got to walk all 3. He said, "You better walk the road to Damascus." That's the road St. Paul was on, the road to conversion. Hey, by the way, you come here, all these masses, you listen to all these readings from St. Paul. You not only listen, you read them and you follow them. That's interesting to me. You listen, follow what Paul did. He used to persecute us. He may have even killed some of us. But you listen and you follow. What if an accused priest got up? How would you respond? Interesting, isn't it? You know why you accept Paul? You accept the conversion, don't you? You allow his conversion to take over. So you'll accept what he says. But the road to Damascus is also about our conversion. What we need to do to be called great. Then he said, now when you walk Damascus, now you got to walk Emmaus. Now that's the road, the beach Jesus was walking on with 2 of his disciples. After he rose from the dead. They're talking and they don't recognize him. How could they not recognize him? They were just with him. They kept talking to each other about all the things that happened to Jesus. He turned to them and he said, what are you guys talking about? You haven't heard? You haven't heard what they did to Jesus? It was Jesus. They did not recognize him. Now, granted, he was in his glorified body after he rose from the dead. How could they not recognize him? Maybe they were so interested in telling their stories and how many details they had, they weren't even paying attention. Until they finally, in the breaking of the bread, my God, this is the Lord. They didn't recognize him. Now, how about you? You see Christ in everybody you meet today? Because that's what it means. The road to Emmaus is to see Christ in every person we meet. Now, I'm going to share this story with you. I'm not proud of this. I want to share this story. I was doing a confirmation retreat in the state of Colorado. 700 teenagers. 598 who didn't want to be there. Okay, but if they don't make the retreat, they can't get confirmed. So I have them for the whole day, 700 of them. I gave an opening keynote address, a workshop, a second talk, another workshop, a third talk, and a third workshop. Then the bishop came for Mass. I preached at the Mass. I was exhausted. I did a good job. I know I did. You know why? None of them left. I was so exhausted. Now, we finished the Mass, then the pizza came. I like pizza, it was fine. Then, Father, come on, stay now, we're going to have the dance. No way. You know why? Because just like you grandparents and you uncles and aunts, when your nieces and nephews or grandkids say, if the music's too loud, you are too old. Okay, so I was not about to stay there and listen. So I worked hard. In fact, my talk that day, I'm going to tell you right now what I told them. And I shook up everybody. I said, listen, confirmation students, if you're not willing to make 3 promises, get out of the program. Can you imagine the teachers at that point? I said, if you're not ready to stand before God and make 3 promises that he will hold you to, don't get confirmed. Because he's going to call you someday and say, hey, you stood before me in church and you made 3 promises. What happened? You will promise, you will teach by your example. You will pray and worship. And you will have an impact on the community through your service. So young people, if you're not willing to make those promises, get out of the program. And I'm serious about that because we need you to teach by your example. We need you to pray and worship. And we need you to have an impact on the community through your service. So I gave this talk and I was pretty powerful. So when I left, I sneaked out the gym. I didn't even say goodbye. I thought, I'm out of here. I'm not staying for this dance. This is going to, no. Father, stay. No, I was gone. So now I leave. I'm staying at the rectory of the cathedral. So I pull in the driveway. And as soon as I pulled in the driveway, I see a knight of the road. A knight of the road coming around the side of the cathedral. Okay. He had disheveled clothing. He had hair down to the middle of his back. He had a brown bag and a bottle. So my thinking was this. Now, dear Lord, I have spent the whole day with your young people in this confirmation retreat. The pastor has been watching the Broncos all afternoon. So I think it is his turn to do ministry. So I'm going to get in the back door of the rectory, and then when he comes, the night of the road rings the doorbell, the pastor will have to answer. Well, as I moved, he moved faster. So anyway, he got real close. I knew what, I reached in my pocket, and I had a $5 bill in my pocket. I pulled it out, and he said, I don't want your money. The church is locked. I'd like to pay a visit to the Blessed Sacrament. He took out the bottle. It was a holy water bottle. I missed Christ. I did not see Christ. I had preached all day to these young people about seeing Christ in the other. That's the road to Emmaus. And I missed it. It's easy to miss Christ when I'm focused on myself. I was focused on myself. And all I could think about is, I'm done. The Lord gave me a great lesson. So John Perkins is right. Got to walk the road to Emmaus. And then he said, once you walk Damascus and Emmaus, now you walk the road to Jericho. Now, young people, that's that great road where, I'm sure you know the story. This Jew was beat up and mugged. They left him on the ground. He probably was bleeding. He was probably half dead. So anyway, he was lying on the ground, and the first person, the scripture says, came by was the priest. So the priest came by and went, whoa, so this guy's in bad shape. But I got a parish council meeting. And he left him. The second group came by were the trustees, the Levites. They stayed a little longer. They discussed that this guy needs help. But we got bingo. And they left him. Finally, a Samaritan came by. Now, Samaritans were taught to have nothing to do with Jews. And the Jews were taught have nothing to do with Samaritans. The Samaritan, he stopped. He not only took care of his wounds, he picked him up, put him on his donkey, took him to a hotel, paid for the hotel, and told the hotel person, if it costs any more, I'll pay you. And Jesus says, now, who loved his neighbor here? So the road to Jericho is to have an impact on the community through your service. And it's based on love. It's based on Christ. You see Christ and you want to serve. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in your life, young people. You're going to be parents someday. Your second grader is going to come up to you. You're going to be a parent. The second grader is going to come up to you and say, hey, Dad, my buddies are all making their first communion. I'd like to make oh yeah, no problem. You can, no problem. And he looks up at you and says, I can't. And you tell him, well, why not? Because you don't go to church. So remember that. Your prayer and worship is because someday you're going to have the responsibility of leading your children closer to Christ. Now, the one nice thing, last night after this celebration, I'm in visiting with some people from Iowa who came down for them. And I was explaining to them that I'm always trying to make decisions of what parishes I'm going to go into. We get so many requests for missions. We take them just as they come. We don't choose one over another. So then I was explaining that we get these requests and we take them one at a time. And all this guy said to me was, do whatever he tells you. And I had given that talk last night, do whatever he tells you. So I'm really trying to pay attention to what Christ says. Now here's one line I'm going to share with you, and I hope you'll pay attention to this line. I came here, Jesus said, so that you would have my joy and have it to the fullest. That's why I came. Now, our church doesn't have that history. I grew up in a church that you weren't supposed to smile in church. You couldn't smile in church. You dare smile in church. You couldn't laugh in church. Couldn't take a picture in church. And Catholics felt, especially loved Lent. They loved Lent. They couldn't wait to get into Lent because you could beat yourself down, and there was a thinking that the more you beat yourself down, the holier you would become. And this idea, the Baltimore Catechism, it's a great, if you got one, it's a collector's item. Don't throw it away. But you know, I learned my religion in that book. And the problem was, in the very first page of that book, man is made in the image and likeness of God. We are made to know him, to and serve him in this life, so we would be happy with him in the next. And we took that literally. The happiness is in the next life. And Jesus said, no, it's here. I came, you have joy now, and have it to the fullest. The great writer Belloc says, when the Catholic sun shines, there's music, laughter, and good red wine. Not Ripple, not Boone's Farm. Good red wine. And the point is, when we are at our best, we are filled with joy and happiness. You know why we don't have a lot of vocations of the priesthood? They don't see us happy. They don't see us happy. All they see us is they're going to read about all the, the priests who have made mistakes. They read about those, and so, I'm going to go there, I'm going to go there. They need to see the joy and the happiness in you. Maybe that's why they'll come to church. But if they think, oh, those are those Catholics. Those Catholics, they got so many problems. We are an Easter people. And Alleluia is our song. I tell you, I had a friend many years ago. He's died now, and very few you probably know him. You have to be my age to know. His name was Jimmy Durante. Okay, he's a real personal friend of mine. I have stacks of letters from him. And every time he performed, he would always get a ticket for me. Anyway, right before he died, I was in Los Angeles. He lived in a very simple home in Beverly Hills. And I was in Los Angeles, and they called me and told me he was dying. So I went to his house, and I went in, and his friends were still there. And he was sitting in a rocking chair with an Afghan, and he was literally dying. So I walked in, and he looked up and saw me, and he said, he immediately turned to his nephew and said, go get my piano and get my hat. And his nephew said, no, Jimmy, no. Your father's here. Go get my piano and get my hat. And he attempted to entertain. And so I said to him, oh, Jimmy, I'm just glad to be here. He said, Father, I was placed on this earth to lighten the load that people carry. And I will do it until my life is over. That's what I want you young people to do. If you'll spend the rest of your life lighten the load of the people that you experience and are with, you'll experience a joy and a happiness that Christ wants for us. Finally, as you look around in this church, if you can't be happy that you belong to a parish that is so filled with faith, you miss the point. When you have a successful project in your parish, like a fundraiser, it's great. But when you have a successful spiritual event, it speaks to the faith in the heart of your parish. So as you begin this dynamic parish project, which is a great project, deepen your own personal life and then share it. And the parish will get better. And you guys and gals up here in front, when I say you are the future of the church, I really mean that. And God is depending on you to lead us into the next century.